people want to say that slavery was hundreds of years ago or whatever it is, and they want to say there's no way that that whole aspect of slavery affects people of color today or affects people of non-color today. This is what they want to say, but it's not true, and we fool ourselves when we think that way, because the only group you can say about that wasn't really affected, the mindset that wasn't affected, was the Africans that first came over from Africa. And the reason why I say that is because they already had their culture established. They knew who they were. Their culture was established, and so they wasn't really affected. I'm sure they were tortured. They hated the situation they were in, but their mindset wasn't really affected. You could say that. I mean, over time when they're here, I'm sure, but you could say that their mindset wasn't affected. But when you start having kids, as they did, and then the kids are taken away and sold, these kids from infant to adult are immediately changed in the mindset of a slave, whatever that is. Inferior, taught inferior, treated as such inferior, tortured, starving, no place in this world, whatever it is, from the baby to they're grown. This is what they're taught, not only by whites in the community, or by the masters or the slave overseers, but also by other slaves, because they were taught that way, so they're passing this on to their kids. It takes an extremely strong mindset to have overcome that, and I'm not saying they liked it, because I'm sure they hated it, they suffered, but as you know, when you're young, we're taught about our environments, we're taught about ourselves, and that type of teaching will stay with you your whole life, and then you pass it on to your kids, and then on and on and on. And it takes a really strong mind. Like Frederick Douglass was a slave, and he was so stubborn in his understanding, because he had educated himself, that he was able to not only get out of the slavery, but he was able to excel in some way and be a speaker and make a stand against people, including not to be abused by other people. He was able to do that. But the vast majority of people didn't have that mindset, because they were taught differently. The only person that was different, could have been different, was the actual African coming across the border, because like I said, they already had their sense of values. They already had this history of who they were. So that could be the difference. But once they start having the kids, and the master or whoever is raising these kids, teaching these kids, or society is beating these kids, telling them what they are in place in the world, then that just goes on from generation to generation. So then you come up to Jim Crow period, and it's the same thing. It's the same group of people. They are trained from babies what their place is in this world, and they believe it. So they're affected. And it takes really strong, insightful, knowledgeable people to think differently and say, this is not right. We can do better. Like a Martin Luther King, like a Malcolm X, like a Gandhi in his country, where you start teaching people through leadership and by example that this is not right. We can do better than this. So that's why I say, when people say that slavery was a long time ago, has no effect, it does have an effect. It has effect on people today. People's minds today, even though they're not the same as the generation before, and they're better, they still suffer, because still people aren't free. There's still police brutality in this country. You're not free. There's still politicians who try to figure out how to do voter fraud or not voter fraud, but voter suppression. Still not free, still fighting. Unemployment rate is double within the black community. Still not free, suffering. There's things in the community that are still telling people of color against themselves, and they have to overcome that. But you do have some amazing people who, and I won't name them by name on this video, who have overcome and are setting example in leadership for all of us. But and we're gonna get better. We're getting better. Society's getting better. The black community is getting better. And as we continue to find our way, we're gonna be really powerful as a group, not only financially, but powerful in our intellect, in our accomplishments. That's all I got.